Today's about lots of different things, but we're starting off with two tech companies. So Microsoft, which has been part of TechShare Pro and supported AbilityNet for a long time, is actually part of our origins is that Microsoft helped create AbilityNet 25 years ago. But another company that's been part of TechShare Pro for many years is Sony. They've got lots of stuff here. They do lots of interesting things in terms of accessibility. We've had lots of different gadgets and things that we've seen over the years. But one of the other things that we're going to be talking about today is experience labs. And this, I think, is a question where people in the accessibility community will recognize the idea of things like empathy labs and experience labs and user testing and so all sorts of ways in which we all try and promote the connection into the user as part of the design process. And I think that I think it's probably 5 or 6 years ago that we did actually have a session about empathy labs. And what prompted this conversation this time round is I think that word empathy is double-edged, and it's not something that people necessarily feel 100% comfortable with. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But later on today, Christopher Patner, who's from Google, who we were intending to do this together, is not here. So I've pre-recorded a chat with him about the Accessibility Discovery Centre, which some of you may have visited or heard of in Google in London. And his experience of running that as a meeting place for people to come in and try out technologies, but also learn more about accessibility. Sony has a similar program and on a similar sort of direction of travel, but equally we talked a bit about this empathy thing. You know, are we comfortable calling those things empathy labs? That's probably a word even now sounds like 5 years ago, you know. So this is a shift that's happening, I think, for us in terms of how we connect in with others around us. Engineers, designers, chief technology officers, finance officers, whatever it is, we're trying to bring people along on this journey with us to understand the needs of disabled people. And so what Sony has, the Idea Lab, which if you haven't been here yet today, we have some exhibits down the other end of the corridor. There's a chance to go and try out the Experience Lab. The way you're modelling that, I think, is showing a sort of sense of direction in terms of how other people could work with this. And so, Joseph's here from Sony. We're going to talk a bit about what your work is, but also I think we're interested in how this plays into changing the mindset of the people around you. So what you're trying to do here is take people along on this journey. So there will be time for some questions within this section. So if you have any questions, thinking about how you're doing work around bringing people along the line of, do you actually understand why we're building this stuff? Do you understand what it's capable of? Do you understand the way it can transform somebody's life? So that's the sort of setting for that. So enough of me. Joseph, tell me what you do, and tell me a bit about what you do at Sony.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me here. It was a great first day, and I'm sure the second day will be great as well. So hi, everyone. My name's Joe Clark-Jones. I'm the Accessibility, Advocacy and Promotions Lead at Sony Europe. Sony Europe is the European division of Sony Group Corporation globally. I started my accessibility journey, or gig, in 2019, about 4 or 5 years ago. I joined the UK government's Government Digital Service, and I was working with a team to implement the accessibility regulations for public sector websites and mobile applications. And then last year I took an great opportunity to work for Sony Europe, working on their various accessibility initiatives and strategies in the European region.
Cool. And what does accessibility mean at Sony in the sense of the scope and the scale of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'll start globally, then I'll focus on Europe. So globally we have our product reach, our services reach, content is worldwide. That covers millions of people. So we do have a accessibility strategy as part of Sony Group's wider sustainability strategy, such as environment. Additionally, we are a member of the Valuable 500, so we have commitments to that as well. For example, we intend to apply inclusive design processes to all our consumer product development line by FY 2025. Also, just this March, we had 50,000 employees globally who have taken the accessibility training, and 1,000 colleagues who have taken inclusive design workshop as well. There's still more to do. There's areas we do good in and areas we need to improve upon. And accessibility isn't just about products, consumer products, such as headphones, TVs. It's also about our workplaces, how we make our offices disability inclusive. Not just offices, we have production sites as well for where we make technology, as well as also R&D labs as well. Also packaging, how we make our packaging accessible. We're really trying to make strides in our packaging, in environmental factors, but also accessibility as well. And also how we communicate as well for our marketing, our branding, our content creation, social media, and also aspects such as customer services as well, how we make that accessible. And Michelle will be talking later about the Be My Eyes, Be My AI collaboration. Within Europe, so I work in the accessibility team in Sony Europe, and we're part of the Sustainability Task Force alongside diversity, equity and inclusion, and environment and social contribution. And there's 4 strands of the work that we do in accessibility. First is internal promotion, so Idea Lab comes into that, so we educate people internally about accessibility, inclusive design and disability. External promotion, external relations, so we work with disability advocates and groups externally. Even just the past few weeks we've been doing product testing with disability groups in the UK and in Spain. Then there's standards and regulations, so we're working hard to make sure that we meet accessibility standards in Europe, notably the European Accessibility Act. We also contribute to the technical requirements as well. And lastly, sustainability, just making sure accessibility, there's a people business benefit as well as also innovation benefit.
Cool. So I'm just going to rewind slightly, because I've just realised we were talking to Jessica about how many different things Microsoft you touch every day.
Yeah.
Sony's a huge range of stuff, isn't it? And I'm thinking about when you first turned up and thought, what am I going to be working on?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously,
so many different touch points that you have to try and think about with that scale of what you're doing.
Yeah, so my previous role was websites and mobile applications, which is a very big task in itself. But to go from websites and mobile applications to physical products, user interfaces on various products, as well as also marketing, workplaces, across video games, movies, consumer products and sports as well. It's a very big task.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, how many people work at Sony?
So in Europe it's a few thousand, globally it's about 100,000.
Wow,
yeah,
cool.
Sony.
Sorry, and then in terms of your own experience, one of the things that have surprised you, just in terms of how much you've described a huge range of work there. What are the bits that have surprised you, or that you're sort of going, oh wow, that's really cool?
I think just a lot of when we go to product teams, just some of the little innovations that they're doing at the moment. Even just something as when we talk to the camera team, you know, the screen reader on our for cameras. It's just those little innovations, big or small. Sony's sort of motto for accessibility is delivering innovation for an accessible future. So obviously we need to meet standards, but we want to use standards as a baseline and use various innovations to go above and beyond that. So.
Right. So I guess that brings us to the role of the Ideas Lab as well, because
Yep.
you're trying to introduce the idea that, you know, first of all, that people understand this is about innovation is one thing, but clearly they need to have knowledge and skills. So what's been your experience with that, and how's that taken off?
Yeah, so it started as what you might call a traditional accessibility empathy lab over a year ago. In my previous role at Government Digital Service, you know, Richard Morton and Nika Henk ran their accessibility lab really effectively and kind of inspired a lot of other teams, organisations, and including myself. So we held one as part of Diversity Week in Sony last year, and we were just really surprised with the engagement we got from colleagues. I know we do take accessibility empathy labs for granted now. They've been around for a few years, but there's still an untapped base that people are still very engaged when they see the accessibility empathy lab. So we decided it got senior management approval, and what we did is we packed up our suitcases, and because we operate in over 20 countries within Europe, we took it to events across Europe. So we've been to Germany, Stuttgart, Lund in Sweden, and Barcelona in Spain. And I think the events have drew over 800 colleagues across Sony Europe out of a few thousand. So what we did recently in the past few months was rebranded it as IDEA, with a more focus on inclusive design, so inclusive design, education and accessibility. We have a fixed space now in our Weybridge HQ for IDEA. And really, again, it's 3 sections, informing about disability and types of impairments, how it affects us all in some way or some form. The second is about assistive products and assistive technologies. We use that particularly in the workplace, that people need reasonable adjustments. They should be able to get the assistive technologies that they need. And thirdly, we talk about really some of Sony's accessibility features on our key products. And you've seen in the idea in the demonstration room, we have such as the Alpha camera, 6700 with screen reader. The PlayStation folks have got the Access controller, which is coming out on the 6th of December. It's a customizable controller kit to really make players play games in comfort, particularly for players with mobility impairments. And also we have hearing aids, so Sony do make hearing aids that are available in the US in collaboration with WS Audiology. So it's really just to get people a bit more engaged, a bit more than just standard accessibility training on PowerPoints or Workday. That all feeds in as part of the internal promotion and making sure accessibility is embedded in Sony Europe.
So from the point of view of standing around in those different settings, what sorts of things stands out for you in terms of the impact it's having on your colleagues as they're walking up? What sorts of things are they saying and doing?
I think I was surprised by how they were sharing their stories, and a lot of them are very personal stories. Colleagues will be open about disclosing their disability themselves when visiting, or their family. Usually it's family members, particularly parents who are elderly. And I'm just surprised at how people encourage people to really open up about their personal stories of disability. Disability and impairments affect everyone. I know we talk about the 1 in 6 figure, but really it is everyone in some form or way. And I was just really surprised at some of the personal stories that a lot of colleagues have come forward. They wrote it on post-it notes, and we just had a sort of discussion really, and there was a lot we could relate to. I have a disability myself. I have high functioning autism, and that's considered kind of an invisible disability where maybe simulation glasses, I put that in quotation mark, doesn't quite cover. So.
Cool. And so what next? I mean, this is something that Sony sees as being a positive thing. It's taking wings in Weybridge.
Yeah.
What's next in terms of the plans for that?
Yeah, so we'd like a fixed space across all our offices. So there is a fixed space in our Weybridge office just outside London. And we want it to be customizable as well, because there's different offices and sites that focus on different aspects of products or services. And again, we want to sort of move on away from empathy and more really about inclusive design and more disability awareness. And hopefully it leads to more actionable steps as well. It also gained traction as well in our Tokyo HQ as well, and they're keen on implementing some sort of space dedicated to accessibility in their offices.
So that's interesting. So it's not something that was existing elsewhere. I mean, you've invented it here, got it rolling around Europe, and then people are going, hey, that's working, let's see what we can do elsewhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I invented it. Again,
No.
I drew a lot of inspiration from public, third sector and private organisations across the world who had similar programs. I know Heather had a really great program at Skyscanner that I learned a lot from, and again at Government Digital Service as well is really effective. So yeah.
And I guess certainly in terms of your experience, I think it's interesting as well. It isn't because you're Sony and you've got the mighty technology company behind you. You're still doing relatively the same simple things to put things in front of people and generate that conversation, which I think is an important and powerful lesson, really. That can work anywhere as a simple starting point for conversations. Yeah,
definitely. And we know disability, again, particularly across Europe, is different ways of how you can disclose disability. And I think this is a good starting point to make those conversations rather than just a tick boxing exercise when you first join.
Great, thank you. Well, we've got a moment for questions. Any questions from the audience? Anything about experience labs of your own that you maybe wanted to share? I think what we're trying to do is encourage people to think about doing this within their own organisations. Think about some of the lessons about how you go about that sensitively and the impact it can have. Anybody got any questions about how to do that? No? Hi. And Lucy as well over there. No, this person here, Antonia, there's somebody here. Could you introduce yourself as well, please?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I work at the British Council. I'm the accessibility lead there at the moment. Question I had was around sort of hidden disabilities like you were talking about. So in terms of like an experience lab, how would you, not simulate, but how would you get people to have an appreciation for the kind of experiences that people with neurodivergent conditions may have?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think accessibility it's probably more focused on at the moment visual and hearing, and with invisible disabilities, it's not quite there in terms of acknowledgement. That's just something, to be honest, it's a question I'm still trying to figure out. We always use in terms of the user journey, it's about how to make things easier and usable for people with various cognitive disabilities, but it's something that we're still trying to, we're on a journey and we're trying to also figure out as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Lucy?
Thank you. So Lucy Ruck from Business Disability Forum. Yep. It was possibly more of a comment again, I'm afraid, but we recently met with Christine Hemphill at Open Inclusion, who I'm sure you know, and we were talking about empathy labs, because I think they do get a bit of a bad name almost, in terms of, oh look, someone spent an hour in a wheelchair at lunchtime and now they know what it's like to be disabled. Well, of course they don't. And Christine talked about how if you walk alongside someone with a disability almost, and I think it's that storytelling that goes along in the narrative that's really important as part of this. And I'm just interested to see how you weave that in. Do you feel you've done that through the storytelling of the people talking about their lived experience, and incorporating that as part of this sort of experience you've done at Sony?
Yeah. I think the Idea Lab is a good, it's almost like an icebreaker to talk about personal stories with disability and impairments. Again, it's that sort of 1 in 6, 1 in 7 figure globally, over 1 billion people, but it affects everyone at any point in time. And again, I think that's just a bit more effective at the moment than a sort of tick box exercise when you first join to disclose whether you have a disability. And again, I think we know about accessibility, that there's still a large proportion of the population that don't, to be honest. Yeah, it's a good sort of starting point for us, and a good sort of icebreaker on hopefully wider to lead to more inclusive and accessible products, services and experiences. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe. I think, as I say, part of what we're trying to do is reflect back to you guys. What are you doing in your organisations? How are you using these sorts of tools and techniques? And I think what's amazing with the Sony story is to see the scale and the scope of what you're doing and how that's growing and the impact it's having. So thank you very much, Joe. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Mark.